Hey everyone, I'm Charting Man Dan with the Chart Guys. I've been trading cannabis stocks for the last 13 years. In this video, we're going to check in on the sector as well as psychedelic names as we get ready for 2024, see how we're positioned and what we're expecting. Hello, cannabis traders and investors. So we're going to check in on the sector here. As we know, it's a very news-driven sector still at this point. Some people were hoping for perhaps some action for the DEA rescheduling before the end of the year. And in the end, we got Biden still going on with his pardons, which aren't really moving the needle much in any meaningful way of actual action. It's a nice headline, but the sector still needs something concrete and significant and something that is accomplished. Not just the potential, not just the maybe, but something actually happening concrete, written down, written in stone. So in the absence of that, we will trade with the broader market to a certain degree. Right now, a lot of these names have bottomed out the same time that the broader market did, the same time that our growth names did, whether it's the biotech sector and these psychedelic stocks, which we'll look at in just a moment, or IWM, the Russell 2000, and the cannabis sector. And that will continue to be a thing. In the absence of news, there will be some correlation with those sectors just as far as sentiment is concerned. They bottomed out at the same time. They've been trading very similarly overall. I've always had the opinion that if we're going to see DEA rescheduling, that's going to come out closer towards the election, essentially saving it as ammo to coast off that headline a little bit, but that's just a wild guess. We need to have a game plan, as I keep saying recently. Have a game plan if the news hits. You don't want the news to hit and then you establish your game plan, because then you're going to be doing it on extremely heightened emotions and you're going to be rushing and scrambling. Write down when this headline hits and it's official that the DEA does something regarding cannabis rescheduling. I will buy this many shares of this name, this many shares of this name, and I have a game plan of, what I'm going to buy and how much I'm going to buy, and then that I'm going to add first hourly consolidation and some potential targets as well for when to begin taking some profit. Because again, a headline of magnitude of actual federal change will be free money if you can act on it very quickly. And so that's where having a chat room with hundreds of eyes is very beneficial, because when that headline comes out, we're just going to send a chat-wide alert to let everybody know and get pinged, hey, this is the real deal, but still waiting patiently. And in the meantime, being very patient. And again, my mindset as a trader is, there's a lot of action going on, but I don't have to have the majority of my capital in play, because I know that I will be able to act quickly on that headline. And I would much rather, even if I had to buy 20, 30% higher than, where we were before the headline, I'll know that I'll be instantly green, which is very valuable as far as not tying up my capital, not having a mental drain of holding bags, etc. So I want to start with IIPR here, looking at the charts, because I don't know why this name is not talked about more. If you like the cannabis sector, this is the most bullish stock, just as far as it's in a monthly, weekly, daily uptrend. I don't think we can say that about any other cannabis or psychedelic stock. So we're looking up, and why? So why is it the strongest? Because it is traded on the NYSE and it has correlation. It is benefiting from the broader market a bit more because of automated bots and algos and trading systems that are tied to what the broader market is doing. And the volume is pretty significant as well. We are trading, $30 million a day on average? Something around that. So, monthly uptrend, higher low and higher high. That's the first monthly uptrend since the all-time high. Weekly chart, extended. If I want a long entry, I'm not doing anything until weekly consolidation. We know a weekly higher low will be the most likely scenario whenever that starts, and we can look for, if you want a swing trade entry, you're looking for a weekly higher low. If we get over 112.60, things open up a lot as far as a lack of resistance. And this reminds me of some of the crypto charts recently, where here's 112.16 or 60. Let's say we top out under 112 and pull back. Look at what coin did. Coin had 116, 114, and when we got over it, it was off to the races as far as seeing 60% follow through. And again, it was the same thing. You clear that resistance, there's nothing nearby until the 200 range. And so IIPR potentially shaping up for something similar. But again, if I want good risk reward, I want to see weekly consolidation before I'm looking for a long at this point. And to see weekly consolidation, we would need to see the daily uptrend lost. We've been holding daily EMA 12 support for the last month and a half. We would have to lose that for the weekly consolidation to be underway. So again, just worth keeping an eye on this name because it's the strongest. I know it's not as sexy a story as MSOs, or maybe people think that there's less opportunity. And I certainly have regrets we were covering this IPO. We were all over it because I was real excited. First actual cannabis company on a major exchange, and kicking myself for missing out on the long-term 2,000% gains. But it's a viable instrument to be watching in the sector. Everybody cares about MSOS a lot more. All right, whatever. MSOS, 2-week equilibrium was the most likely scenario, and it's shaping up. We've got our low, high, higher low, lower high, and the bulls are trying for a quick higher low at 599. The thing about equilibriums is when you break it on one time frame, you zoom out, because oftentimes a tightening range on a shorter term time frame breaks into a tightening range on a longer term time frame. And so what would that look like? Well, again, let's say in the absence of any significant news, let's say that the bulls break 769 resistance. Okay, that's a tightening range breaking bull. Then we go to the monthly and we remind ourselves it's possible to break 769, but fail the high of 988 and then just form a monthly tightening range. This is a good thing. You know, bulls like quick gains and big upside and excitement, but building this base is a good thing because, again, you can look at so many growth names that are trying to build this long-term base. ARKK on the monthly time frame. Growth names smashed after the 2021 euphoria top, sideways for a very long time, and trying to break the sideways range bullish. And I put out a video last weekend talking about this called the balanced trade strategy, and it's a very simple concept, but check it out because it's what bulls are hoping is happening in the cannabis sector as far as establishing a long-term base of support where the balance between supply and demand evens out, and then the scales flip where demand starts to outweigh supply. But with where we stand, we're still in a tightening range. Zooming in, we had a really nice response to this bear break, no follow through. And again, the headlines of Biden with the pardon, people taking that to potentially increase the probabilities that the DEA acts. But that led to a nice move up this past week and healthy consolidation. There's no red flags, but it's all about 769 in the short term. We've got to break 769. If we do, we get to the highest level that we've seen in 3 months, which would be fairly significant. But wouldn't be surprised to be just chopping around for a while if we don't get any kind of headline or any kind of catalyst, because again, our range is very clearly defined, 478, 988, and it's a very wide range that we can trade within for months. Longer term, start of 2024, a lot of eyes are on this sector to be the weakest, it has been the weakest sector out of anything that I look at in the entire market. And so we've been seeing moves to laggard sectors. And so again, you go to the weekly time frame and you look at IWM, it bottomed when MSOS bottomed. I guess you can call that a coincidence if you want, but there's been a significant move up there. The airliners, jets, have been extremely weak. They've been bouncing. The solar sector, again, it's not just cannabis. I mean, the solar sector is selling off 60% plus. It's been nothing but bears, and it's trying to bottom and be a laggard sector that puts in a longer term bottom. The biotech sector, as I mentioned, again, it was testing the lowest levels that it's seen in years. It bottomed at the same time and has made a significant recovery. So can we see a significant recovery? Part of that has to do with tax loss harvesting. So just imagine a scenario where you've got a portfolio and you've got partial of your portfolio, your high risk is allocated to some cannabis. And as we know, the stock market today, or this year, did extremely well. SPY was up like 25%. The NASDAQ was up 50% plus. So there's a ton of gains out there this year.
If I've got gains that I'm trying to offset, let's say, you know, I was in Facebook, Meta, and my Meta position is up 120% this year, and I take some profit, I can offset those gains by selling my, let's say I got TLRY that's down 40% or whatever. I can sell that to offset. So oftentimes you will see into the end of the year, the beat up names get one final push down of being crushed before the scales tilt, because at that point you've exhausted, you know, anybody that's left to sell in the short term sells into the tax loss harvesting. And so Chart Gal Lori just put out a video with some of the names and sectors that she's watching for this concept for Chart Guys members. And so if you are a Chart Guys member, check that video out, because some of the cannabis stocks made the cut to be included in that. But the psychology of that setup is worth keeping an eye on. And just generally speaking, with my experience of trading cannabis sector for 13 years, the two times to be paying attention are into the fall voting season and the new year. January, often, this was back, you know, 2010, 2012, cannabis, you know, 13, 14, cannabis penny stocks. But the time to, you know, December into February oftentimes was a bull push. So when I'm looking at individual names, as we know, divide them by MSOS to see relative strength or relative weakness. And so every week I just check in to see is anything majorly shifting. We can see GTBIF divided by MSOS is telling us it's still the clear lead bull in this sector. Its relative strength has been persistent for years, and that hasn't changed. We're still up at the highs. And then I look at the other names. TCNNF tried to shift momentum, but didn't really do much, and it's back down towards the weaker side of things. It used to be a lead bull. Back in 2022, TCNNF was a lead bull, and then it fell off significantly. And Curaleaf doesn't really have any clear direction in terms of relative strength or weakness. We just chop around a lot. We're stronger, we're weaker, we're stronger, and CRLBF clearly is generally the weaker. We're testing the weakest it's been all time compared to MSOS. So again, GTBIF, Curaleaf, Trueleaf, CRLBF is the ranking of those four of relative strength to relative weakness compared to the MSOS ETF. So just doing GTBIF analysis, and again, the way that I do this, just apply it to whatever name you're looking at, but this 2-week time frame is much stronger. We have a potential first bull cross of these EMAs for the first time in years. If we get over 1249, that's a monthly uptrend confirming. That would be the first monthly uptrend since all-time highs. That would be a significant shift. So in terms of establishing a base of support and trying to flip the scales between supply and demand, Green Thumb is further ahead of the game than most names. What we need to get that break is under 10%. And that would get us to the highest level that we've seen in a year if we break that level. Comparatively, CRLBF, what do we need? It's a night and day difference. 10% for Green Thumb. Curaleaf needs 100, not Curaleaf. CRLBF needs 104% to get to where GTBIF is 10% away from. That is a massive difference. The way that I trade sectors is I look long on the stronger names and short on the weaker names. And other people do that as well. I don't short the US names because it's not liquid enough, but other people are. Canadian side of things, TRLY. So one of the previous, I guess 2 weeks ago, CGC was clearly standing out stronger than TLRY. That drastically shifted when CGC had news of, I forget if it was dilution or the reverse split or both, whatever, but it derailed the bulls significantly, and that's the risk of holding these names. I don't hold Canadian cannabis names. I will trade them into momentum. And, you know, when there's a headline and there's a little bit of a short squeeze, they get a lot of follow through. CGC just went hundreds of % in 2 weeks on that prior hype run. So that's when I'm interested. Fast, hard gains, lock in your profits, see you later. Not with investing. If you're an investor, you need to understand share structure, dilution, convertible debt, their cash on hand, all those things. Google ChartGuys dilution, And there's a video I made a year and a half ago where I used ACB as the example of a name that is in a death spiral of dilution. And you can have people arguing that CGC is in a similar boat. So, what do I want to say? Educate yourself about these fundamentals. If you are investing and not reading financial statements and understanding these concepts, you're kidding yourself as far as thinking that you have any kind of edge in investing. You're just guessing and hoping. Be real with yourself. TLRY, daily inside bar. So profit taking this past Friday. It's been a nice move up off the lows. A grind, no breakout, no massive move up, but just a grind of making a bit of a shift. Again, the balancing of supply and demand. So here is supply significantly outweighing demand for months. We trade sideways and establish a balance between supply and demand, and the scales tilt. So now what? 2-week equilibrium. Still looking for the same thing here. We've got our low, high, higher low, and anything under 340 is just a lower high. That means that we can go 30% higher from here and still be in this tightening range. We're going to have earnings coming up eventually in a couple of weeks, which will be a factor, but watching for the possibility of this range to keep tightening up, through the first month plus of 2024 in the absence of news. Anything that I say is always with an asterisk of in the absence of news, because we know the right kind of headline can throw everything out the window and shift things significantly. The most important daily support on TLRY, I would want to see the bulls hold 221. If we lose that level, that's the first indication to me that bulls are losing their momentum that they've had the last couple of weeks. CGC, it broke its 2-week equilibrium bearish on that news. So low, high, higher low, lower high, and then we broke support. That support level of 471 broke. So we are in bear control mode still. If things are going to shift, we've got to confirm the daily uptrend. Bulls would then be having a target of 678 for a gap fill. Again, the 10-to-1 reverse split for me just opens the door for shorts again. I don't want to short a 51-cent stock. It's a psychological thing, but I'd be much more open to shorting a $5 stock. Even just, the perception of potential gains as a bear. Well, if I short a $5 stock and it heads down to 3, that's a big win. Granted, it's the same as 50 cents to 30 cents, but again, it just has some different psychological implications. But overall, CGC from that news significantly weakened, and we go to TLRY divided by CGC to see the comparison, and we can see that CGC was stronger to start December, and then everything shifted. Psychedelic name, CMPS. So I'm watching this downtrend resistance line, and there's a lot of resistance here. And you can see it's just lower highs, long-term lower highs, 1148. Every one is that one was higher by 6 pennies. But aside from that, clearly there is a strong resistance, 11 to 1150. And we tested 10-12 resistance and failed. So I'm keeping an eye on this name for what I would want to see in an ideal scenario as a trader is a pullback for a weekly higher low and then a bull break. And again, watch the biotech sector with this sector. I find that's the best in terms of clues and correlations. Look at the biotech sector. Doesn't this look certainly familiar? These long-term lower highs. The difference is we broke. We had a bull break of some of these levels this past week on XBI, but it's very similar. Another difference is this was a double bottom where CMPS hit a new all-time low. So there's differences. CMPS is weaker than XBI, but it trades very similarly. And again, watching for a longer-term bottom to try and be set. Monthly EMA 12 resistance rejected this bounce attempt, this one, and we're testing it now, trying to put in a longer-term bottom. But again, I would love to see, this is, cup and handles are continuation patterns, so I hesitate to call this a cup and handle because we're not in an uptrend, we're not continuing, but the psychology of the pattern is you reject from resistance, you bull flag, and then you break resistance. And so I'm keeping an eye out for something like that to shape up. MNMD, again, just tightening sideways on the long-term time frames. So we bottomed at 212, we topped at 501, a higher low at 245, and now anything under 501 is just a lower high to potentially keep trading sideways. And that would be almost 2 years of sideways trading if it takes another few months to tighten up. Again, I've said this many times, I anticipate making a lot of money in a hype run in the psychedelic sector when we get the right kind of headline and catalyst. What you need for a hype run is what the broader market is doing right now. Confidence, euphoria, strength, people with cash around saying, who can I look to that hasn't run yet? But you got to have that headline to attract and say, hey, here I am, bring the money over here, because otherwise there's certainly other names out there. And so MNMD, I do have a position. Let's go full disclosure. I've got MSOS as a position, and I've got MNMD as a position. Those are the only ones I have open right now. MNMD position was from this cup and handle like pattern. I entered on this daily consolidation knowing there was a clear multiple top 314, 314, 311. And as soon as that broke, we got lots of follow through. I took some profit. I kept my stop under 291 and I'm still in. So daily uptrend intact. We did just hit the highest level in a while, but we need a longer term trend change because if we don't break 501, we can easily trade within this wide range. Again, it's 100% range, same as MSOS. We can trade within that 100% range for another handful of months. But I'm just going to let that position that I have ride long term because it's risk free at this point. I'll stop out if we break 291 and won't lose a dollar. CYBN, I don't trade this name, but this tells me volatility is coming. Volume and volatility. Why can I say that? Look how tight we're getting. This is extreme volatility in both directions. And after periods of extreme volatility, you see constriction of ranges and a drop off of volume. The 20-day average volume is this orange line, and it's been dropping for a while now. What you're going to see is a break of this range, one direction or the other. Obviously, the bulls were hoping for a resistance break and a volume spike associated with it. So the first signal for the bulls is getting over 40 cents. And to confirm the break, you got to get over 43. Then we're looking for a lower high compared to 57. But if you like trading and you like volatility, this pattern tells us, keep an eye on CYBN. We're going to see a volatility spike. The last time I said that was back here. Same concept. Tightening range. Granted, it only lasted 2 days to the upside and then a significant pullback. The volatility returned for a bit. So you got to be quick and protective in these sectors. But if there's one thing that technical analysis can do, it tells us when to anticipate volatility and volume. And we're knocking on the doorstep here. SNDL should have been with the cannabis names. So this is one worth keeping an eye on. I really liked this setup. And shout out Red Devil in the chat room for pointing it out. But again, it's the same concept as MNMD. I liked MNMD because we had a triple top of resistance. When it breaks, there's not a ton of resistance right nearby. Same deal here. 161, 161, 161, 158. So that tells us when we break 161, something shifts. It'll be the highest price in months. And we ended up with a quick plus 5% move. Granted, not a lot of follow through, but enough to position. If I buy 162 and I sell half at 169, my break even is now 155. I can place a stop at 155, not lose anything if it drops down to that level, and have potential reward if this marks a longer term bottom. This is again that sideways, so supply outweighing demand, sideways balancing of the scales, and the scales are trying to flip in the other direction. Again, not much follow through at this point, but enough for bulls to position a bit. Same thing though, monthly. Low of 125, high of 236, higher low of 131. Anything under 236 is a lower high. It's possible we trade within this tightening range for another 2-3 months. So I'm going to be watching all these names for tightening monthly ranges to eventually break bull, ideally bull. Depends on what the broader market is doing. The good news is the broader market's really strong. But watching for the sideways monthly ranges to try and break bull in Q1 or Q2 2024. It can happen without the news headline, but you can only see that happen without the news headline if the broader market remains very confident, because a confident broader market means people are more willing to put their money in the highest risk, highest reward things. You know, if I'm up 120% in Meta and, 100% in Netflix and whatever, then I'm more willing to gamble some of those profits on these weaker names that haven't done anything long-term for the Bulls yet. All right. Have those game plans, write them down. Feel free to ask any questions, and do good things.